This is the hottest podcast on earth. I love Drink Champs. Love it. I love Coca Vision. Love it. I love Joe Buttons. Love it. But the Hip-Hoppreneur podcast is like no other. Now, will all of you please come on my show?
The music, the movement, the money.
I'm Cedric Muhammad, business and monetary economist, and the former GM of Wu-Tang Management. I'm now currently in front of you as the Hip-Hoppreneur. Two of my biggest inspirations with this Hip-Hoppreneur concept and who I am as a person and how I look at the business, Queen Latifah and Diddy. So I interned at Flavor Unit at a very young age. Queen Latifah, called her Dana, she had the most beautiful, the most warm office, incredible human beings I've ever been around. A lot of women that she hired, her and Shakim. And I saw her hire people from the community, family members, groom people. Dana, Queen Latifah can do no wrong with me. I just love her. She embodied so much of the solution to what plagues a lot of the female artists today in terms of how they build their brand and their image. Latifah solved that like 25 years ago. And then I had the opportunity to do some consulting with Bad Boy Records in the mid-90s. Another young, progressive office with a lot of young, black individuals who would not have been given a chance. I saw Puffy go out of his way to hire those type of people and create that energy in the office. And I bring Latifah and Diddy up because sometimes I think we give people too much credit for rhetoric. So you can have a pro-business, pro-black, pro-hip-hop, pro-entrepreneurial mission, and your music can reflect that, but you don't hire anybody from the culture. You don't hire anybody from the neighborhood. You go out of your way to partner and joint venture with a corporation. And I saw firsthand what Diddy and Latifah did with their economics. And I will always, always, always be grateful for them and celebrate that. I think the straight line between Wu-Tang and Wall Street is that experience gave me a lot of insights into marketing and human nature. And I think on the street, sometimes there's a preference for like the algorithm or artificial intelligence. Sometimes there's the thought that you create growth in a company by displacing or firing people and replacing them with technology. That's never true. So with so many people that I had to deal with, I never made arrangements from a travel standpoint for less than 15 people. Quite often it was as many as 30 people. I had to make split decisions. I had to read a scenario and I had to determine what the group dynamics were. And stuff like that matters on the street, believe it or not. You're still dealing with people as consumers, as employees, and then you get a lot of interesting interplay between analysts and investors that I think if you hadn't been in a group experience and couldn't tell the difference between noise and influence, you would not necessarily know who's impacting what. So that was a jewel, to be sure. Also, I would say that music metaphors are some of the most powerful that you could have in life. You know, the power of emotion, the ability to change someone's perspective with just a sound, body language, nonverbal communication. Music is like no other art or science in that regard. What I think we bring that's different in terms of perspective is two things. One, a deep understanding of human nature, which did in large part come from my background in the music business. And you learn a lot about marketing and what moves people. And then two, the perspective of what shapes the music industry from outside of it. So if you have to follow the stock market or be involved with the decision making of an institutional investor, or really anybody who's trying to make money, you can't just look at music. You have to look at geopolitics. You have to look at technological companies. You have to look at demographic and anthropological changes. So a company that maybe makes widgets or TVs or phones might be more influential on the music industry than an artist. So I bring that kind of sensitivity to the table I like to help artists think outside of the art and outside of the industry, and you can't do that unless you know what's going on in the broader economy. So there's been an uptick, an increase in the rise of master deals, but not every master deal is what we envisioned when we celebrated Suge Knight owning masters, Jay-Z getting his masters back. You can own something but still not control the revenue stream. So ownership without control over the cash flow is almost meaningless. I don't want to say that having an asset is meaningless. That's always good. But if I own my masters, but the record label controls my digital rights, controls the collection of the money from the streaming service that the music is being played on, and then can determine when I get paid. And on top of that, I owe them money for the marketing that they gave me up front. Owning your master is virtually meaningless. So there's a lot of movements now that are helping the artists get their masters, but if you're not getting their digital rights back and you're not controlling the collection and the payout, you're not accelerating when an artist gets their money that's due to them, at the end of the day, I don't believe that the economics have changed. So that's why I call the music contract a prison. You can get a good lawyer and you can wait on politicians to improve the contract itself or to improve intellectual property law, but your best bet is to do something else outside of the grip of that contract that will help you get marketed better, get better cash flow, and own real assets that you can leverage offline, in the community, in a boardroom, whether it pertains to your music or not. I struggle and I wrestle sometimes when artists' business deals are held up in order to not only inspire people, which they do, but also to cover the real economics of the business. So I hope that what The Dream signed, the publishing deal that he made with a firm that's traded on the London Stock Exchange, I want it to be good for him, good for his family, and good for his descendants, because with copyrights, that has always been a dilemma. The estate of an artist who may pass away, they don't benefit like they should. So I applaud the arrangement, whatever he entered into when he sold 75% of his catalog. However, when you look at the numbers, it was $23.8 million that he sold for the rights to 302 songs. And my math shows that at around maybe $8,000 a song. He kept 25% of his publishing, which I applaud. But if you do the hourly rate and some of the mathematics that we do at Hip-Hoppreneur, I think that catalog is worth a lot more than what he got. And so while I hesitate to get involved in commenting on his business dealings, I'm not shy at all about commenting on the economics of the two copyrights. Your composition, songwriting copyright, and the sound recording, the master. And if you have people who are able to buy up everybody's catalog, which is what is happening, and it's advertised to the culture, the younger members in particular, as a model to follow, then again, we don't improve upon what some of the mistakes have been in the past. So we repeat them and we continue them. So that's why you got to start thinking about revenue streams outside of your publishing catalog, outside of your masters, and outside of the sale of your music. And I keep my eye on all of those deals. Another thing that was peculiar about the Dreams deal to me was the company who purchased his publishing. His deal is the only one where they explicitly told you it was $23.8 million. There's been about 3 or 4 other deals that they've entered into. They don't give the dollar amount. So whether that was some provision that I'm unaware of, or maybe the Dream wanted that communicated as some sense of pride in that number, why is it that the hip hop artist numbers are exposed and those who write in other genres, maybe as well as hip hop, that information is still privileged and protected? So I'm challenging every artist, every journalist, every mogul, every accountant, and every lawyer who has benefited from the culture, have a more honest discussion about a deal, whether it's 50 Cent's vitamin water deal or Nas's Silicon Valley investment deal. Scrutinize these deals and find out, are these things really in the best interest of not just the artists, but the communities that they come from? And I think we may be surprised to learn that everything that glitters is not gold. I would like to think of myself as part of a movement. Hip-Hoppreneur speaks to a generation. There's not any individual, although there are leaders within it. I would like to see myself as a servant leader within the Hip-Hoppreneur movement, but it's generational. So we're faceless and we're a mass at the same time. And I believe that there's so many of us who think like how I think, that if we would just connect with one another, and if we would support artists who are trying to market themselves in this different way and are trying to speak to economic development and community development, not just a brand or a beef, then the whole society itself will rise. And you won't see as much music devaluing women. You won't see as much music glorifying violence. That's a sign of an immature culture. So if all of us who've grown up and feel we owe hip hop something because it speaks to us, it inspired us, it gave us our role models in business and in life, there's another chapter for us to write other than just a hot song and the latest piece of gossip or the intrigue that comes from competition. All of that is fine and it has a role. But this is a life-changing culture and a life-changing industry, and it needs to accept its responsibility. And it has to be done partially through business. It can't just be done through the creative side, and it can't just be done through activism. It has to be done through commerce. I don't think that the marketing plan and the promotional strategy of any artist permits maturity. So there's no evolution that's permitted past. And I talked to RZA about this. A 3.5-year cycle is really all you get. And after that, you know, you competing on the basis of sensuality, appearance, energy. We just get older. So a record label's gonna go back looking for a 17-year-old version of you. They're not gonna look forward to a 27, 37-year-old version of yourself. But my proposition is that you can make more money at 27 and 37, the older you get. I believe for the top tier artists that the terms of the deal are more favorable. They're extracting more from a bad contract, from a bad template. The joint venture may be a little more favorable to them. The revenue payout may be a little bit quicker, and the streams may be a little bit broader. But the dynamic of that cash flow not being as liquid as it needs to be, and that asset not being leveraged on as wide a scale as possible, that's still an issue. And I point people to trademarks and patent process. When you look at who owns the trademark, when you look at who owns the patent process, when you look at who controls the counting of the books and the payout, you begin to see that even our giants of artists are really insignificant when it comes to changing the economics of the game. So the music industry was at its peak in terms of revenue, cream, cash coming in late 90s. Then with the MP3, the rise of file sharing, and then what I think is very important that a lot of people don't like to bring up is the death of the mom and pop record store at the neighborhood community level. When those two things happened, the revenue stream dropped dramatically. So people say music was demonetized. But what really happened was the pattern of the consumer changed in a way that the music industry's release schedule couldn't keep up with. So Russell Simmons and I actually had a debate over this in 2002. He said that music sales that year fell because of file sharing and people wanting music all the time whenever they wanted. He was right. But I said it was because of the release schedule. You had like Eminem and a 4 or 5 month gap with a Cameron album. Everybody was loading up for the fourth quarter of 2001. Nothing was released until May of 2002. So they enabled the consumer to move away from going to stores, to buying music year round. And that is what, in my opinion, opened the door for the file sharing. But from a revenue standpoint, the uptick in revenue, it just started recently. It's over the last 2 or 3 years that music from streaming, revenue from streaming music sales has turned things positive, but we've never reached the levels of late 90s. So anyone who tells you music is back and everyone's doing well, they're not telling you the truth. Ask them what the numbers were in the late 90s, and they pale in comparison where they are now. Now let's get specific about different streaming services. For a stream on, say, Spotify or Pandora or Tidal or Apple, it's a percentage of a penny. So Happy, Pharrell's song, all of those streams, I think it was over 100 million streams. The payout from one streamer alone was only $6,000 for over 100 million streams. So at the Hip-Hoppreneur, we run the numbers on what you make just from streaming on a monthly basis. And if you have 1 million streams of music, you basically making the equivalent of $11 an hour, about $1,700 a month. So there's no way that you can really get paper and build wealth with that kind of income stream. And so streaming music is good for the streamers, and it's good for the labels, and it's okay for the top tier artists. But for the mass of artists and entrepreneurs in the sector, this is not a return to any glory days. It's just a slight improvement on poverty. I love me some Migos. And I support the Migos and their claim to be the greatest group in hip hop culture, because I just see them as the latest manifestation of DNA that came from Parliament and Funkadelic, went through Wu-Tang, and now they have it. They have the baton. Here they are doing things outside of the grasp and the umbrella of a record label that originated a lot with George Clinton and what they did. RZA took it to the next level with getting the labels to co-opetition. They entered into cooperate and then compete. And then now the Migos. So I have no problem with them assuming that title, and I think I could defend them maybe better than most people in their claim to be this all-time great group. I start immediately not looking at a client as a commodity. You're a human being. You're created in a unique, matchless way. And so you have something by default that the world needs and has never seen before. Let's pull that out rather than have you fit a template or imitate and mimic somebody else who may or may not be original or in tune with who they are. There's 4 components to what we do. We develop a leadership profile. We start with the idea that you're a natural born leader and you have to get in touch with that. Secondly, we're big on brand alignment. There's a big difference between an image, a reputation, and a brand. And if you can bring those in alignment, it'll impact your marketing and also broaden your reach to the broader society. Third, entrepreneurial development. You gotta own a business where you grew up or where you live. And it needs to be in the fabric of the community. And then lastly, there's power brokering. What's the nature of power? Why do certain negotiations not go well? What are some of the best tactics and strategies that people execute in the boardroom? And how do you get in touch with yourself so that you know exactly what you want and are not fighting yourself, pursuing something that's really not in your best interest? So you get that off the bat, those 4 elements. And this is about making people better people. It's not about making your music hotter. It's not about being better than somebody else. You have no competition. There's only one you and you're matchless. And so I just try to work on pulling out of a person that's already been deposited within them. Be yourself. That's my ultimate tip, is challenge everyone on your team to answer that question. Am I being myself? Is this marketing plan helping me be myself? Is this promotional campaign helping me be myself? Or are you trying to push me to imitate someone who's hot? So much of what masquerades as marketing and promotion is just intellectual laziness. You just look at an artist who's hot and you drive and shape the artist and incentivize them to just copy what's already working. And so it's almost like a short-term benefit. You get this sugar rush, this sugar high for looking like someone or sounding like someone, but there's no sustainability. And so your popularity declines rapidly. You haven't built anything. And before you know it, the money that you eventually comes so late you can't even do anything with it, and you find out you're in debt. So be yourself. That's the #1 tip. Easier said than done, but that's what we focus on in Hip-Hoppreneur.